A bullet whizzed past Wade Morgan's ear, burying itself in the wooden post beside him as he ducked behind the water trough, his heart pounding with the familiar rush of danger. It wasn't the first time someone had tried to kill him, and it probably wouldn't be the last. The dusty streets of Redemption, Colorado had seen their fair share of violence in 1878, but today's ambush felt personal. "Show yourself, Harper," Wade called out, his voice steady despite the rage building inside him. "Or are you too yellow to face me like a man?" A figure darted between buildings, and Wade took his shot. The man yelped and stumbled but kept running. Wade cursed under his breath, holstering his Colt as the would-be assassin disappeared down an alley. Sheriff Cooper emerged from his office, rifle in hand. "Morgan." "What in tarnation is going on?" Harper's boys. "Still sore about what happened at Wolf Creek," Wade explained, dusting himself off. His tall frame cast a long shadow in the late afternoon sun, his face weathered from years under the harsh western sky. "You can't keep living like this, Wade," the sheriff said, lowering his voice. "One day your luck's gonna run out." Wade adjusted his worn leather hat, his eyes scanning the street. "I've been hearing that for 5 years now. Maybe it's time to listen." Wade didn't respond. Instead, he mounted his chestnut mare and headed out of town. His ranch, the Double M, lay 12 miles outside Redemption, far enough to be alone with his thoughts, but close enough to ride in when supplies were needed. As the landscape opened up before him, the tension in Wade's shoulders began to ease. Out here, with nothing but open country and the rhythm of his horse beneath him, he could almost forget. Almost. 5 years had passed since he'd buried his wife and infant son, victims of a fever that swept through the territory. 5 years of solitude, broken only by the occasional gunfight or cattle drive. Wade Morgan had once been the most respected rancher in the territory, with a loving family and a future bright with promise. Now, he was just a man with a gun and a reputation that kept most folks at a distance, that suited Wade just fine. After Sarah died, he'd walled himself off from anything resembling attachment. The pain of losing her and their boy had nearly destroyed him. Never again, he'd promised himself. Never again would he allow someone close enough to break him when they inevitably left. The following morning dawned clear and bright. Wade was up before the sun, as usual, checking his fence line when he noticed a wagon in the distance, moving slowly along the road that ran past his property. Visitors were rare out this way, and Wade's hand instinctively moved to his gun belt. As the wagon drew closer, he could make out a woman at the reins, her hair tucked beneath a bonnet. Beside her sat a young boy, and in the back of the wagon, several more children were visible. The sight was so unexpected that Wade found himself riding toward them. "Madam," he called, approaching cautiously, "you're a ways from town." The woman pulled the wagon to a stop, regarding him with wary but determined eyes. "We're headed to Whispering Pines. My brother has land there." Wade took in the state of the wagon, an axle dangerously close to breaking, a team of horses that looked exhausted, and the pale, tired faces of the children. The woman herself appeared barely able to stay upright, dark circles under her eyes speaking of exhaustion. "Whispering Pines is still 2 days' ride," Wade said, "and that axle won't make it another mile." The woman's shoulders slumped slightly, but her voice remained steady. "We'll manage, sir. We always do." A small girl, no more than 5, peered over the side of the wagon. Her face was smudged with dirt, but her eyes were bright with curiosity. "Mister, are you a real cowboy?" Despite himself, Wade's lips twitched. "I suppose I am." "Winifred, sit down," the woman scolded gently before turning back to Wade. "I appreciate your concern, but we must continue." As if to contradict her words, the wagon let out an ominous creak, and the axle gave way with a splintering crack. The wagon lurched to one side, causing the children to cry out in alarm. Wade dismounted in an instant, moving to steady the horses. "Nobody move," he ordered, his voice firm but calm. The woman climbed down carefully, surveying the damage with dismay. "Children, stay in the wagon," she instructed before facing Wade. "It seems we're in more trouble than I thought." "I can fix it," Wade said, "but not here. My ranch is just over that rise. I'll help you get the wagon there." The woman hesitated, clearly struggling between pride and practicality. Finally, she nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Morgan, Wade Morgan. I'm Willow Reed," she said, extending a hand that was simultaneously delicate and work-hardened. "And these are my children." Wade's eyes widened slightly as he counted 6 children of varying ages peering at him from the wagon. "All yours," a shadow passed over Willow's face. "Yes, all mine." Wade didn't push for details. Everyone in the West had a story, and most weren't for sharing with strangers. "I'll need to unhitch your team and secure the wagon so we can transport it. The little ones can ride with you on my horse, and I'll lead the way." The process took nearly an hour, with the older children helping where they could. Wade observed them working together with practiced efficiency. These were not children unused to hardship. The oldest boy, around 12, worked particularly hard, his eyes serious beyond his years. "That's William," Willow explained, following Wade's gaze. "He's been the man of the family since his father passed." Wade nodded but didn't respond. The mention of death and fathers struck too close to home. By mid-afternoon, they had reached the Double M. Wade's ranch house was modest but solid, with a large barn and several outbuildings. It wasn't fancy, but it was well-maintained, a testament to a man who took pride in his work, if not in unnecessary comforts. "You all can stay in the house," Wade said as he helped Willow down from his horse. "I'll take the barn until your wagon's fixed." "Mr. Morgan, we couldn't possibly. It's not up for debate, Mrs. Reed," Wade cut in. "Night comes quick and temperatures drop. I won't have children sleeping in a barn if there's a proper roof available." Willow studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Thank you." As Wade showed them inside, he realized with a start that this was the first time in 5 years that his home had contained voices other than his own. The silence he'd cultivated had been shattered by the sounds of children's curious questions, excited whispers, and occasional squabbles. "It's not much," he said gruffly, "but the stove works and there's plenty of firewood." "It's wonderful," Willow assured him, looking around with appreciation. "Children, thank Mr. Morgan properly." 6 voices rang out in a chorus of thanks, ranging from the shy whisper of the youngest to the reluctant mumble of William, who clearly didn't like accepting charity. "I'll get started on that axle," Wade said, uncomfortable with their gratitude. "There's food in the pantry. Help yourselves." Outside, Wade breathed deeply, trying to calm his unexpectedly racing heart. Having people in his house children no less felt like an invasion. Yet there was something about Willow Reed's dignified determination that had made it impossible to turn them away. He was halfway to the barn when he heard footsteps behind him. Turning, he found William following him, a determined set to his jaw. "I want to help," the boy said. "With the wagon." Wade considered refusing but recognized the look in the boy's eyes, the need to be useful to protect his family. It was a look Wade had seen in his own reflection years ago. "All right," he agreed, "but you follow my instructions exactly." William nodded solemnly, and together they set to work removing the broken axle. The boy was a quick study, handing Wade tools before he even asked for them and asking intelligent questions about the repair process. "Where are you all coming from?" Wade asked after a while. "Kansas," William replied. "Our farm failed after Pa died." "Ma sold everything to get us to Uncle James's place." Wade nodded. "It was a common enough story in these parts. Your ma's doing a fine job with you all." William's chest puffed up slightly with pride. "She never stops working, but sometimes I see her crying when she thinks we're asleep." The simple statement hit Wade harder than he'd expected. He remembered finding Sarah in similar moments, the weight of frontier life sometimes overwhelming even the strongest spirit. "That's not for you to worry about," Wade said, perhaps more gruffly than intended. "You just focus on being a good brother and helping where you can." They worked in silence for a while longer before Wade sent William back to the house to wash up for dinner. Alone again, Wade found his thoughts continually drifting to the family now occupying his home. He told himself it was merely concern for strangers in need, nothing more. Yet he couldn't deny the odd feeling in his chest, a warmth he hadn't experienced in years. That evening, Wade entered his own home like a visitor, uncertain of his place. He found the main room transformed, the table set with his mismatched dishes, the stove radiating heat and the smell of cooking food filling the air. "Mr. Morgan," Willow greeted him, wiping her hands on a cloth. "I hope you don't mind, but we've prepared dinner. It's the least we can do." Wade stood awkwardly in the doorway, suddenly aware of how long it had been since he'd shared a meal with anyone. "You didn't need to do that." "Perhaps not," Willow replied with a small smile, "but we wanted to." The youngest children had already been put to bed in Wade's spare room, but William and the three middle children, Winifred, Walter, Wesley, and Wendy, sat expectantly at the table. Wade noticed they'd left the head seat empty his seat, though he rarely used the table at all, preferring to eat standing at the counter. "Sit, please," Willow invited. "The food will get cold." Dinner was a bewildering experience for Wade. The children, initially shy, soon bombarded him with questions about his ranch, his horses, and his life as a real cowboy. Willow gently redirected the more intrusive queries, shooting Wade apologetic glances that he found himself responding to with small smiles of his own. "How long have you lived here, Mr. Morgan?" Willow asked during a lull in the conversation. "Built this place 8 years ago," Wade replied, surprising himself with his willingness to share. "Came out from Missouri looking for a fresh start. And you've been alone all this time?" Winifred asked innocently. "Winifred," Willow admonished. "It's all right," Wade said, though his throat had tightened. "No, not always alone. I had a wife, Sarah, and a son." He didn't elaborate, but the look of understanding that crossed Willow's face told him she'd grasped what remained unsaid. "Children, help me clear the table," she said softly. "Mr. Morgan must be tired after working all day." Later, when the children had been tucked into makeshift beds, some in the spare room, others on pallets in the main room, Willow found Wade sitting on the porch, staring at the stars. "The night air is beautiful here," she said, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders as she took a seat in the rocking chair beside him. "Clearer than Kansas," Wade nodded. "It's why I chose this spot. You can see forever on a night like this." A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the distant howl of a coyote and the gentle creaking of Willow's chair. "I lost my husband 3 years ago," she said finally. "Influenza. It took him and our youngest in the same week." Wade turned to look at her, seeing the grief etched in the fine lines around her eyes. "I'm sorry." "So am I," Willow replied. "For your loss as well. William told me what you said." Wade looked away. "Boy talks too much." "He admires you already," Willow said with a small laugh. "They all do. You're the first kind man they've encountered since we left Kansas." "The road can be hard on a family alone," Wade acknowledged. "Yes," Willow agreed softly, "but we persevere. What choice do we have?" The question hung in the air between them, unanswered yet understood. In the vast, unforgiving landscape of the West, perseverance wasn't just a virtue, it was survival. "The axle will be ready by tomorrow afternoon," Wade said after a while. "You can be on your way by morning the day after." If he expected gratitude, what he received instead was a searching look from Willow. "You're eager to return to your solitude." It wasn't a question, and Wade didn't treat it as one. "It's what I'm used to." "Is it what you want?" Willow asked, her voice gentle but direct. Wade stood abruptly. "What I want doesn't matter much anymore, Mrs. Reed. Good night." He retreated to the barn, unsettled by the conversation and by the woman who seemed to see too clearly past his carefully constructed walls. The following day brought unexpected complications. Wade rose early as always, heading to the barn to continue working on the wagon. He was surprised to find breakfast waiting for him, a plate kept warm by the stove and coffee still hot in the pot. The children were already outside, the older ones helping with chores Wade hadn't even assigned them, the younger ones playing a game that involved much laughter and running. Wade watched them for a moment, a strange ache in his chest. Willow emerged from the chicken coop, a basket of eggs in her arms. "Good morning, Mr. Morgan. I hope you don't mind, but William insisted on feeding your horses, and the girls wanted to collect eggs." "I don't mind," Wade said, realizing it was true. "Where did you learn to make coffee like that?" Willow smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her tired face. "My husband always said I made the best coffee in 3 counties. It was one of the few things he complimented freely." Something in her tone made Wade wonder about the kind of man Willow's husband had been, but he didn't pry. Instead, he nodded toward the barn. "I should get back to work on your wagon." "Of course," Willow said. "Wesley has a talent for woodworking, perhaps he could help." Wade agreed, and soon found himself working alongside the 9-year-old boy, who indeed showed remarkable skill for his age. Throughout the day, Wade found his routine pleasantly disrupted by the Reed family, Wendy bringing him water, William asking questions about ranching, Winifred showing him a drawing she'd made of his horse. By mid-afternoon, dark clouds had gathered on the horizon. Wade frowned, watching the sky with a practiced eye. "That's a bad storm brewing," he told Willow when she brought him lunch. "Might hit tonight." Willow's face fell. "Will we still be able to leave in the morning?" Wade shook his head. "If it's as bad as it looks, the roads will be too muddy." "Might have to wait another day." He expected disappointment, perhaps even an argument about the urgency of their journey. Instead, Willow simply nodded. "Then we'll wait. Safety comes first." The storm hit with full force just after dinner. Wind howled around the house, rain lashing against the windows with frightening intensity. The younger children huddled together, eyes wide with fear at each crash of thunder. "Who wants to hear a story?" Wade found himself saying, surprising everyone, including himself. "You know stories, Mr. Morgan?" Winifred asked, her small face lighting up despite her fear. "A few," Wade admitted, settling into his chair by the fire. "My pa was a Texas Ranger, had all sorts of tales." For the next hour, Wade spun stories of brave lawmen and daring rescues, carefully edited for his young audience. He was rewarded with rapt attention and, gradually, the easing of fear as the children became engrossed in his tales. Willow watched from her seat by the window, her expression unreadable in the firelight. When the youngest children began to nod off, she rose to guide them to bed, murmuring thanks to Wade as she passed. The storm raged throughout the night and into the next day, confirming Wade's prediction about travel conditions. The family's stay extended to a third day, then a fourth as the rain continued intermittently. During this time, a routine emerged. The older children helped with ranch chores, the younger ones finding ways to entertain themselves that gradually included more of Wade's participation. Willow took over the cooking and some of the housekeeping, breathing life back into rooms that had stood neglected for years. Wade found himself sharing more stories each evening, not just his father's tales, but eventually his own experiences as a young man traveling west, establishing his ranch, the early years with Sarah. Speaking her name became easier somehow, with Willow's understanding eyes on him and the children's uncomplicated interest. On the fifth day, the sun finally emerged, bright and warm, quickly drying the sodden earth. Wade knew the roads would be passable by morning, and a heaviness settled in his chest at the thought. He was in the barn, making final adjustments to the repaired wagon, when Willow found him. "It looks good as new," she said, running a hand along the freshly reinforced axle. "Better even." Wade nodded, unable to meet her eyes. "It'll get you to Whispering Pines without trouble." "The children will miss you," Willow said after a moment. "They've grown quite attached." "They'll be fine," Wade replied gruffly. "Children are resilient." "Yes, they are," Willow agreed. "More so than adults, sometimes." She paused, then added softly, "I'll miss you too, Wade." It was the first time she'd used his first name, and the sound of it in her gentle voice sent an unexpected warmth through him. He looked up, finding her much closer than he'd realized. "You hardly know me," he said. "I know enough," Willow replied simply. "I know you're a man who keeps his word, who helps strangers without expectation of return, who treats children with respect and patience." Wade turned away, uncomfortable with her praise. Anyone would have done the same. "We both know that's not true," Willow said. "Especially not out here. The West isn't kind to widows with 6 children and no money." Wade's head snapped up. "No money? I thought you were heading to your brother's place." Willow's expression faltered slightly. "James doesn't exactly know we're coming. My last letter from him was over a year ago when he first claimed his homestead. I'm hoping." "You're hoping he'll take you in," Wade finished for her, understanding dawning. "And if he won't," Willow lifted her chin. "Then we'll figure something else out. We always do." Wade stared at her, seeing for the first time the desperation behind her dignified facade. And what if Whispering Pines isn't what you're expecting? That's rough country, Willow, not much established there yet. Any roof is better than none, she replied, though uncertainty flickered in her eyes. Wade turned back to the wagon, his mind racing. The thought of Willow and her children facing further hardship, possibly even ending up without shelter, was suddenly unbearable to him. "Stay," he said abruptly. "What? Stay here," Wade repeated, turning to face her. "At least until you've sent word to your brother and received a reply. The double M is big enough. There's work for William, and the little ones could use the stability." Willow stared at him, disbelief evident in her expression. "You want us to stay?" Wade hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, I do." "Why?" The simple question demanded an honest answer. Wade took a deep breath. "Because in 5 days, you and your children have brought more life to this place than it's seen in 5 years. Because William reminds me of myself at that age. Because Winifred's drawings should be hung on walls, not packed away in a traveling trunk." He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "Because when you smile, I remember what it felt like to have something to look forward to each day." Willow's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Wade, I can't accept such generosity without—" "It's not generosity," Wade interrupted. "It's selfish, really. I've been alone so long, I forgot what it was to be part of something. Your family reminded me." "We're not your family," Willow said softly. "No," Wade agreed, "but maybe someday." The words hung between them, an invitation and a question all at once. Willow reached out, her hand finding his. "Someday," she echoed, her fingers intertwining with his. That evening, Wade announced to the children that their journey would be delayed. They would be staying at the Double M, while Wade helped their mother contact their uncle. The news was met with cheers from the younger children and a searching look from William, who seemed to understand there was more to the decision than was being said. In the weeks that followed, the Reed family's presence transformed the ranch. Wade expanded the garden with Willow's guidance, built an addition to the house for the older boys, and began teaching William and Wesley the finer points of cattle ranching. The younger children flourished under the stability of a permanent home, their natural resilience allowing them to put down roots quickly. A letter was indeed sent to James Reed, and his reply came a month later, apologetic but clear. His homestead had failed. He had moved on to work the silver mines in Nevada. There would be no refuge for his sister's family in Whispering Pines. Willow took the news with quiet dignity, though Wade found her later that evening, staring out at the sunset with tears streaming down her face. "We'll figure something out," she said when she sensed his presence. "Perhaps there's work in town. I could take in laundry or stay," Wade said simply, moving to stand beside her. "Not just for now, stay permanently." Willow turned to him, searching his face. "Wade, I can't ask that of you. 7 people is a lot to take on. You're not asking, I'm offering." Wade took her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. "These past weeks have shown me something I never thought possible again, that life goes on, that hearts can heal." "Are you certain?" Willow whispered. "This isn't a decision to make lightly," Wade smiled, a genuine expression that erased years from his weathered face. "I've never been more certain of anything. I was afraid of loving again, Willow, terrified that opening my heart would only lead to more pain. But you and your children have shown me that love isn't something to fear, it's something to embrace, even with all its risks." "The children would need a father," Willow said, her voice barely audible. "A real father, not just a benefactor." "And you?" Wade asked, his heart pounding. "What would you need, Willow Reed?" She met his gaze steadily, her eyes reflecting the golden light of the setting sun. "A partner, a friend, someone who understands that love can be born again from ashes." Wade reached up, gently brushing a tear from her cheek. "I think I can be those things. If you'll give me the chance." Their first kiss was tentative, a gentle exploration of possibility. When they parted, Wade rested his forehead against hers, a peace settling over him that he hadn't felt in years. "We should tell the children," Willow murmured. The news was met with reactions ranging from Winifred's exuberant clapping to William's solemn handshake and quiet "Thank you, sir." That night, as they all sat around the table, no longer Wade's table, but their table, Wade looked at the faces surrounding him, and felt the last of his walls crumble. 3 months later, Willow Reed became Willow Morgan in a simple ceremony performed in Redemption's small church. The town turned out in force, curious to see the woman who had accomplished what many had thought impossible, bringing Wade Morgan back to life. Sheriff Cooper, serving as best man, leaned close during the celebration afterward. "Never thought I'd see the day," he confessed. "You were so deep in that hole of grief, I feared you'd never climb out." Wade watched as Willow danced with William, both of them laughing as they navigated the steps. "I needed someone to throw down a rope," he said simply, "or in my case, 6 ropes. The children changed you," the sheriff observed. "They reminded me of who I used to be," Wade corrected. "But it was Willow who showed me who I could become." That night, after the children were asleep in their beds, no longer makeshift pallets, but proper bedrooms with names carved on the doors, Wade and Willow stood on the porch of the Double M, gazing at the stars that had witnessed their first real conversation months before. "I used to think this land was too vast," Wade said, his arm around his wife's waist. "Too empty. Now I see it differently, room to grow, to build, to dream." Willow leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. "From the moment we broke down on your land, I felt something I hadn't felt since Jackson died, hope." "I felt fear," Wade admitted with a chuckle. "Absolute terror at having my peaceful existence invaded by 6 children and their beautiful mother. And now—" Wade turned to her, cupping her face in his hands. "Now I can't imagine this place without the sound of children laughing, without your cooking filling the house with wonderful smells, without William's serious questions about cattle breeding. And without me," Willow teased gently. Wade's expression grew serious. "Without you, there would be no light. You brought the sunrise back to my life, Willow Morgan, and I'll spend the rest of my days making sure it never sets again." As they sealed this promise with a kiss, a shooting star blazed across the Colorado sky, a fitting benediction for a love born from broken axles and mended hearts, from a man who feared loving again until a woman with many children taught him how.